Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stochastic.com NFL Strategy Show, Ownership Top Stack Edition. We've been leaving you guys hanging recently with this show, starting late, pushing it back. Apologies in advance, but we're here. We're here. And we got a lot to talk about today. We got a 12-game slate, of course, not 13. There's no bye weeks yet. Only one Monday night game, but you got a London game between the Jaguars. They're home away from home. And the Falcons, but you've got 12 games and a really good one. Ben and I broke it down yesterday a bunch on the First Look show. If you haven't checked that out, you can find it here. You can also check out our single entry and 3max podcast exclusive version of the strategy show only on podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is you play. We had a great time doing that show yesterday. Actually, Jordan hung with us and produced that for us while we did it. And yeah, catching our stride there. We went over some wild strategies, looked over all of the lineups for single entry that had the winners, what those lineups looked like. And I tell you right now, those builds in no way were weird, were crazy. It was more so just being different in a couple spots with your lineup builds instead of being different with getting to like 1% owned plays. And you're going to see a lot of that too. Neil and I are going to look before we get into ownership and the top stacks and tackle this week 4 slate at what the winners looked like for the Millie Maker and some other slates and some other big single entry stuff for week 3. I promise you're going to go, you know what's going to happen? And by the way, I'm Dave Loughran at Lafayette_D, joined by Neil Orfield at PlayerQDFS. Follow us on the X, formerly known as Twitter. And hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. Show us some love around here. Atone for your sins. And if you're listening or watching after the fact, comment down below. Leave one. We read them and respond to all of them. When you look at this lineup, Neil, and everyone in the watching this looks at this lineup, you know what they're going to do? They're going to go, shit, I wish I built that lineup. Normally, you and I would go, with a lot of these Millie Maker lineups, we'd go, I wouldn't in a million years have gotten to that lineup. But this one, looking at it, and some of these other ones, I go, yeah, I could have seen myself getting there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Atlanta Jared Goff to Sam Laporta single stack just makes so much sense against that Atlanta defense. I guess we didn't have any Atlanta runbacks, but like most of these players made a lot of sense. Like Kenneth Walker, Raheem Mostert, both players. And of course, you look at the ownership in this lineup and it's a ton of ownership. Like other than Jared Goff, there's nobody in single digits in terms of ownership. So it's kind of like you just really had to have the right combo of players this week. To be honest, I don't think I would ever make this lineup just because it is too chalky. There aren't that many, again, outside of Jared Goff, there's nobody who's really contrarian, but at the end of the day, like you're just trying to put up the most fantasy points, and this projected really well. These are a lot of players who were live to put up a lot of fantasy points. I never got close to this combo. It was a rough week for me in week 3. I got to be honest. So I was not close to this lineup, but yeah, looks like a nice enough lineup. A little bit too chalky for my taste. But add in the fact that he duped himself to win the Millie. I'd take that.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he duped himself to win the Millie, which is funny because he had 45 lineups. Makes you wonder, did he hand build all of these and then ran out of time on the last one?
So actually, I read a short interview with the guy who did this, and apparently it was an error with late swapping. So I think he probably late swapped onto a dupe.
Gotcha. And then ended up duping himself.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, because you're playing 45 lineups, you're generally not hand building all of those.
Yeah.
But it would be odd to dupe 2 of them,
Yeah, exactly. So this guy, as you said, he put in 45 lineups. He also had like several in the top 70 or something. Like he ended up winning $1,248,085. Like you just don't do that on Millie Maker. Yeah, right. Just absolutely,
that's amazing.
Absolutely nuts. So congrats to this guy, CT. I don't even know how you would say this name here, but congrats to him because that's pretty awesome. I don't think I've ever seen anybody win $1.25 million in a Millie Maker before.
Amazing. First, third, fifth, 12th, 19th, 33rd, 56, 77, 400, 477.
Yeah,
amazing.
That's just nuts.
But okay, hear me out. This is why I say this is one of those lineups where you go, man, that makes sense. And I actually love this build. I try and do this sometimes just with far less success. So you look at all this and it's chalky, right? But the one spot that he got different, and the only person that duped him was himself. The one spot he got different was instead of the stack for Miami, he went Tyreek Hill and Mostert, both of whom had ownership, but he played them without Tua, without any run backs there, and single stacked Goff with Laporta. So all of these players that he had, even the Bills defense was chalky, amazingly. But then the Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill, this is what Ben was talking about yesterday, granted for single entry and 3-max strategy, and this lineup almost feels more catered to that. But the one subtle difference was playing a wide receiver and a running back on a really good offense without anyone else and without their quarterback.
What's insane is it would have been even better if he just played the second running back from the same team, who was even better than Mostert. Devin Achane put up 49 fantasy points. Like, I don't know if that combo was used at all in the Millie Maker, because that was 99 fantasy points out of your running backs if you just played Mostert and Achane, the two running backs from the Dolphins. Pretty insane.
My thinking on the whole Achane thing was people played him at probably, what was it, like 1% probably?
It was like 0.3%. Yeah.
But any of those people that played him probably built bad lineups around him.
Most likely. So as somebody who sometimes plays backup running backs in good spots, and this wasn't necessarily one that I ever would have considered playing, but like, I don't think it's necessarily always a bad idea in a Millie Maker setting to count on some like weird things happening and playing players like Achane who have that explosive ability, don't need a ton of snaps. I kind of understand the play independently, but certainly I would have never played him with Mostert. Like, part of the thesis of the play, if you're playing a backup running back, is there's a pretty good chance that he's just getting more of the work than we expect, or there's an injury to the starter, that kind of thing. So I never would have considered playing them together.
Yeah, and it was also a 12-game slate, right?
Right. You don't really need to be playing those kind of plays on a 12-game slate unless you really believe in potential upside there.
The winning lineup in the power sweep as well, 908 Connor. We'll take a look at this lineup, and then we can get on to week 4. But this stuff gives us a lot of insight. There were, surprisingly, this is 100,000 up top, surprisingly a lot of lineups that looked a lot different at the top in some form or fashion. So this one, for example, Neil, Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson stack, and we saw a couple of those as winners. I think the Spy and Red Zone both had that. I could be wrong. Basically everything had Keenan Allen, but this had Cousins, Ford, Walker, Jefferson, Allen, Tank Dell, Ingram, Adam Thielen, and the Bills. 267 won that one. But yeah, Cousins and Jefferson with just the Allen run back. Beautiful. You look back on it and you go, yeah, it just makes a lot of sense. All of these lineups, though, had relatively high ownership, and it's just one small thing that differentiated them and got them the win.
Yeah, no, I mean, this again looks like a totally reasonable lineup. Nothing too shocking in the lineup. Like, again, he didn't play Achane. Like, he didn't need the 49-point guy who nobody played. So yeah,
no, I don't think any winning lineups had Achane.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess your thought is probably right, that they were just shitty lineups that ended up playing Achane this week anyway. Probably people not really using projections, that kind of thing. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Again, you get the Vikings stack with the bring back, which was pretty chalky. I mean, Cousins to Jefferson was chalky. Keenan Allen was chalky. Again, you just needed to play the right combos this week, because they were popular lineups winning this week, including the defense. As you said, you didn't really need to get different anywhere. There was no off the wall plays here.
No, not at all.
You know what my takeaway is?
What's that?
Adam Thielen is just going to put me in a body bag all year, because he's like the one player in best ball I was like, I feel comfortable fading Adam Thielen because he was so bad last year. Now he's going to an offense with a rookie quarterback. He just, to me, was like, there's no way Adam Thielen is going to be a player that you need this year in best ball and season long and stuff. And he's just crushing so far. Adam Thielen is a guy that, maybe we need to start embracing it a little bit.
I was very high on him last week, but only because of, I'll be honest with you, the reason that I was really high on Adam Thielen was because of Andy Dalton, because of Andy Dalton's just propensity to lock on to a guy, and you got a veteran receiver there. Sure, there's DJ Shark, but I will say this much. While I was very high on Adam Thielen, and we can look at the deeper dive, I'd be lying to you if I thought he was just going to have a monster game like that. That was a huge game. I was hoping for a nice little 20 spot out of him, Neil. You know what I mean?
Right, exactly.
I was hoping for the 8 for 70 and a touchdown.
Right.
Not that monster game. Did he even score? I think he just had like 11 for 140 or something stupid.
I think you did. Yeah, I think you're correct. And as Brendan says, it's a revenge game for Thielen this week too. Yeah, I'm well aware. Oh, he did score. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Yeah, 11 for 145 and a touchdown. What were you saying though?
I was so Brendan in chat says it's also a revenge game for Thielen this week, and I'm just saying, yeah, I know he's coming back and playing my Vikings this week, which is maybe the best spot you could possibly have as a receiver facing the Vikings. So maybe it comes down again. Maybe Adam Thielen is just going to continue crushing my soul, both from a fantasy and real life perspective for the rest of the year. I don't know, man.
Yeah, man. And with Bryce Young expected back, you might still have to take a look at Adam Thielen. We'll talk about it. But let's get into it. So we've got week 4, got ownership, and of course, ownership will be refined consistently throughout the week, right? That's always the case. Our ownership projections constantly refined throughout the week. Top stacks to all of that stuff constantly going to be updated and sharper, especially as we get more injury news and all of that stuff. But let's dive into this and start at running backs. For those of you guys new to the show, welcome. If you're unfamiliar with this format, we go running back, wide receiver, tight end. On the first look show yesterday, we started quarterback, but we save quarterbacks for the top stacks part of the show. And really, I think it's fair to say, Neil, when we talk about wide receivers, we're usually talking about quarterbacks as well at that spot.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, let's do it. But always helpful to get a look at what lineups won. It's just, I can't get away from the fact, and this isn't to say you do this every week, I can't get away from the fact how on its face, these lineups looked so chalky that won. And then you just take a slightly closer look and you go, look at that one tweak, like Tyreek Hill and Mostert in the same lineup with no Tua. It was a chalky lineup and it didn't matter because you did something a little bit different in the field. You know, it's so weird.
And that's something that we talked about actually on several shows last week, that it's not just individual player ownership. You also need to be looking at combinatorial ownership. And that was just a combo. Yeah. Not a lot of people playing the Tyreek Raheem Mostert combo without, and they could have honestly probably played Tua as well. Tua had a good enough game there, but not a lot of people playing the combo of Hill with Mostert, and particularly without Tua, just a rare combo. So something that we probably need to talk about more on shows. And it's funny that we started talking about it a little bit more last week, and then we see it come into play right away in week 3. So maybe something we'll continue to focus on a little bit more. Like maybe, these two players are getting a reasonable amount of ownership, but maybe not a lot of people are going to be playing that combo together, or that combo without, like a lot of people, I think this week played Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. This is a rare week where it actually was maybe not that uncommon to play Mike Williams and Keenan Allen without Justin Herbert, but maybe those are the kind of conversations that we're going to continue to have a little bit more throughout the year.
It also didn't hurt that Keenan Allen threw a 49-yard touchdown to Mike Williams.
Very good point. You don't see that all that often, the wide receiver to wide receiver touchdown.
Ready to dive into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So, and by the way, glad you guys are hanging out with us on a Wednesday. One more time. Apologies for the late start. We'll get this fixed up. Don't worry. And we're almost at 50 likes out of the gate. So feeling good. Running back position is okay. So I think wide receiver and quarterback are almost as loaded as you can get for a 12-game slate. I'll say that out of the gate. You look at the top of the position, just stacked from top to bottom. I won't repeat everything I said yesterday, but you guys go look at the player pool on DraftKings or FanDuel. Look all the way down on DraftKings to like 7,500 and tell me that all of those guys don't have slate breaking ability. Look at the quarterbacks up top. Hurts, Allen. Hurts is an 8-point favorite. Josh Allen against Miami, 53.5 total game. Tua, Herbert against the Raiders. And then there's some cheap quarterbacks as well that I think are interesting. But at running back, it's not a bad position. But Eckler's still questionable. He's dealing with a high ankle. We'll see how that plays out. Pollard's against New England. Could be a sneaky spot if he goes overlooked, especially after last week's complete egg from that Dallas team. Jacobs has struggled, but I think this game could shoot out in a divisional spot against the Chargers team that I have very little faith in most of the time. It's that the mid-5, high 5K range where I think and low 6K range where I think a lot of ownership is going to come into play, from Sanders to Kyron Williams to Rachaad White to DeAndre Swift and all of those guys. Mixon being low 3K. I'll tell you what, if ownership comes in where you're getting like a popular Miles Sanders again, a popular Rashad White against the Saints, a relatively popular Mixon against Tennessee, if that comes to fruition, give me Javonte Williams, give me DeAndre Swift, give me those guys, and give me a lot of them. That's where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Javonte Williams, that's an interesting, not somebody who I had initially thought about, but yeah, in that matchup with Chicago at
I love him
5,500,
this week.
that is a great call. Yeah, Javonte Williams could absolutely crush this Bears defense. So I like that quite a bit. Man, Madison 5,800. I don't know. I played so much Madison last week, and it didn't like completely kill me. Like he wasn't awful, but he so easily could have scored a touchdown and just fumbling issues and just was inefficient. I don't know. But against Carolina, maybe we go back to Alexander Madison. Yeah, I think you're right. That range I think is looking pretty good here. Just looking at all of the different running backs we have in that kind of mid 5K to mid 6K range. I like a lot of those guys as well. I think they make a lot of sense. One running back who stands out to me, who I'm curious your thoughts on. What are we going to do with Josh Jacobs at 7,100 against this Chargers defense? I mean, to me, that stands out as like he was so good last year. You take last year's Josh Jacobs, put him in this matchup at 7,100, and I'm just jamming that. I'm just playing all the Josh Jacobs. He's been so bad this year, though. What do you think's going on here?
I'm going to play him. I think it would be unwise to not play any Josh Jacobs in a spot like this. I know he hasn't been good. I get that. I was actually talking about it the other day. This dude is 34th in rushing yards. I tweeted this yesterday, Neil.
So bad.
34th in rushing yards. That's crazy. But you know what? Last game, he still saw 22 total looks. Underwhelming performance, but 22 total looks. Do you know how many rushing yards he had against Buffalo?
Is that the game he had negative rushing yards?
-2.
Yeah, it's not great.
No. Denver 19 for 48. I mean, it hasn't been good, but I can't sit here and pretend that I don't have interest in a spot like that. Now, I admit I tweeted this out today. I just found it ridiculously interesting, and I think you guys probably will too. By the way, follow me and Neil while you're at it. If you don't want to, that's cool. I wouldn't blame you.
Don't have to.
So, yards before contact. This is a stat that running backs can have some hand in for sure. But oftentimes, like if you're looking at this, the offensive line clearly plays a significant role in yards before contact, right? Without question. So
the Eagles.
So check this out. I don't know if you saw that when I threw this out there today, but you'll find this interesting. You guys will as well. And it just speaks to my point of like, people always say, well, why do you like Miles Sanders? Why do you like Miles Sanders? And I would tell them, I loved Miles Sanders with the Eagles. I have been, starkly opposed to Miles Sanders with Carolina this year. Last year, Miles Sanders led the league with 836 yards before contact. 836 yards before contact. You know who leads the league in yards before contact this year?
Is it DeAndre Swift?
And he's basically played 2 games.
Yeah, that is absolutely nuts.
He had 1 carry in week 1. This guy has 219 yards before contact in 2 games. Josh Jacobs has 47 yards before contact. He's averaging 1 yard before contact per attempt. Put that in comparison to somebody like DeAndre Swift at 4.9 yards before contact per attempt. He's probably going to have to do a lot on his own, Josh Jacobs. But also, I don't hate this matchup against the Chargers. I really do think there's legitimate shootout potential here. So I'm with you on Jacobs. I like that spot. I think he's at a price now and maybe ownership where people may just not want to get to a ton of him.
Yeah, I mean, I love the matchup with the Chargers. This is about as good of a matchup as you can hope for the Raiders. As somebody in chat pointed out, it does change the equation if Jimmy Garoppolo is out, which I think he is questionable at this point. I don't think
they expect him to clear concussion protocol.
Oh, they do. Okay. Well, it would certainly be helpful. When you're in a great spot already, I just don't want to add in more variables. So I would rather have Jimmy G out there just because I don't want to deal with those variables. I would absolutely love this spot for Josh Jacobs. And then, of course, have to ask myself, what about the other side of the game? Are we going back to Josh Kelly after he just sucked against the Vikings? If you're not going to be good against the Vikings run defense, you're probably not going to be good against anybody. But I mean, Josh Jacobs had a good week 1 along with Austin Eckler there. Like, is there any chance that we see a return of Josh? So yeah, Josh Kelly. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah. I, we don't know if Eckler's going to play. And I know, you know
Yeah,
that
good
as
point.
well, but
Yeah.
you know, he has looked so bad, but at 5,300, there probably is some point in getting back to him. I don't know, man. This is a team that in week 1 decided that they were going to run the ball a ton. I look at it, I go, man, how about Kellen Moore? New offensive coordinator, they're running the ball 54% of the time. That's an uncharacteristic approach from the Chargers, but that offense looked good, huh? And then the next week, they kind of gave up. Fine, I get that against Tennessee. Kelly had 13 attempts, couldn't do shit. Last week, they got the win in spite of head coach Brandon Staley. 11 attempts for 12 yards. And the problem with Joshua Kelly, 0 pass game involvement there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. At some point, maybe he picks up a little bit more involvement in the pass game, but yeah, so far has not been. I was kind of hoping that he was just going to step into the Austin Eckler role, and they're going to be forced to use him in the pass game a little bit. But yeah, that has not happened so far. They've clearly adjusted the way they play for Josh Kelly being in there instead of Austin Eckler. I'm sort of working under the assumption that Eckler is going to be out again, just based on all of the what they've been saying has sort of indicated to me that he's not going to be ready yet, but who knows? Maybe he could be back and ready for this game. And if he is, if Eckler is playing, then I think he's a slam dunk against this Raiders team as well.
Also, Brandon B said, unfortunately, I'm a Raiders fan. The problem is that Jacobs should have shown up during the summer. Now he's knocking the rust off and getting his timing, vision settled. You might be right, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not the craziest thought that, this guy held out all summer. I'll go back to Jacobs for sure. I will go back to DeAndre Swift. I assume that you are not opposed to that either, Neil.
No.
He had 16 carries last game, but I really do think that they were just kind of saving him late in that game on that final 9-yard drive. Didn't really use him at all. Didn't need to. They were moving the ball. Tampa scored and never got the ball back. 9 minutes to go in the fourth, never got the ball back. So I'll go back to Swift. I'd love to see him involved a little bit more as a pass catcher. But if this Eagles offense is going to open up, crater-sized holes in the defense, how do we not want some of DeAndre Swift? Plus, it's not just him running through open holes. You see that hurdle on Monday night?
He didn't go very far with the hurdle. Didn't he get an extra 1 yard? Maybe
picked up another 5-6 yards. The cutbacks, everything looks really good with him. That's what I'm saying. I don't think there's any argument that while the offensive line has been great to him, his vision has been spectacular as well.
Yeah, it's funny. You wouldn't think that you would have interest in a running back who's not really involved in the passing game. He's also not maybe he's the goal line back, but it doesn't matter because you're just going to do the tush push with Jalen Hurts every single time. So he's not really the goal line back. He's not really involved in the passing game. Typically, these are running backs that I'm just going to say, no, thanks. I don't want to play him. But the Eagles offensive line being so good and Swift, as you say, looks pretty good out there. Yeah, you got to have some interest there.
For what it's worth, I do think he's the goal line back.
Do you?
Let me say this.
What about Boston Scott? I don't know.
Nah, I don't know. I think him and Gainwell will both get opportunities at the goal line, but I don't think there's any reason to assume that Swift can't get some of those looks. I know people say he can't run in between the tackles and everything, but I think, put it this way. Look at it this way. I don't think that Swift, when this team gets inside the 10 or so, I don't think he's just never going to be in the game.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like what the Eagles had last year. It sort of felt like it was just a rotation. They would just it doesn't really matter who we threw out there. Didn't feel like, maybe I'm wrong. I guess you're the Eagles fan. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
It was Sanders for the most part. Yeah,
it was Sanders. Okay. So maybe, yeah, I mean, it just, in the end, it doesn't really matter all that much because at the goal line, it's going to be Jalen Hurts. But I guess, it would make sense to just leave your running back out there if you're at the 5-yard line, close enough to the goal line. That involvement does matter.
Yeah, last year, just pulling it up in case I'm misremembering, which is entirely possible. Last year, goal line attempts, not including Hurts, is 13, but or 11. Sanders had 7, Gainwell 3, Scott 3. But if I remember correctly, a couple of those Scott and Gainwell ones were in garbage time too. Right. So, no, I'm sorry. Sanders had 14 attempts inside the 7. He had 7 or in the 5. He had 7 touchdowns.
Okay.
But you look at like inside the 10, he had 28 attempts. Gainwell had 13. Scott had 8. So they were involved, but there was still a guy that got, the first and second crack at that a lot of times. What do you want to do with Rachaad White? Because I hate this matchup.
First of all, what Jordan says, Neil with the Linkin Park reference, and I can't even think of what I said that. What was a Linkin Park reference?
What was it?
I have no idea. Jordan will have to tell us.
Oh yeah, of
okay.
course.
All right, that's good. Yeah, it didn't even occur to me that I was.
Did he say it just like that too?
Yeah. Did I kind of sing it? I don't know. Yeah, I don't think that I'm going to love Rachaad White against New Orleans. Of course, I didn't play. Who was it? Jerome Ford against New Orleans last week, and I was totally wrong on that one. So it certainly could work out for a running back who is involved in the passing game. I still don't think that, depending on the ownership, like if Rachaad White gets any kind of meaningful ownership against that New Orleans defense, I'm going to be completely out. If he's getting like 5% ownership, then yeah, I'll have some interest there. But yeah, it just comes down to what the ownership looks like on Saturday, on Sunday. Obviously, ideally as close to game time as possible. We want to be checking the ownership updates. But if it remains high, I'm going to be out completely on Rachaad White. If it gets down in the single digits, then maybe I'll take some shots there. What do you think?
On who?
Rachaad White.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Probably not. I don't know. But yeah. I don't. The only reason I have interest usually in Rachaad White is not really because he's good, but because he should get the most of the bulk of the work. He even in that game against Philly, the whole 17 touches thing was encouraging. So I'm with you on that. Like I think you could absolutely make that argument, right? They still 17 touches in that game. I mean, they tried to run the damn guy out of the end zone and took a safety. I don't know what they were doing committing to the run there.
Right.
In some, excuse me, in some senses you respect it, but on other hands, it's like you just can't keep doing that. He played 91% of snaps though. Tucker, who people have been saying might take over, he went from 24% of snaps in week 2 to 9% in week 3. It's a good sign for White. I'm not going to argue you at all there. My only thing is that I think there are a ton of options in this price range. Okay, in the 6K range, like you have Mostert against Buffalo, Mixon against Tennessee. I don't love that spot. Cook against Miami. The problem there is he's just clearly not the goal line back. Clearly not the goal line back. It's Harris or Murray or something like that, or Josh Allen. Kyren Williams on the field a boatload right now. I think he played every snap last game, 100%. Yep, 95% of snaps the game before that. So, and then there's Sanders, there's Swift. I like Swift. I'm not going to Brian Robinson against that Philly run defense right now. Javonte Williams. And you know who else? You're gonna throw up a little bit when you hear this, Neil. But I'm likely gonna have some Najee Harris.
I did just throw up a little bit in my mouth. Yeah, Najee Harris, not something that I'm ever excited to play. He did continue to have more of the workload than we were expecting. Like I kind of thought Jaylen Warren, and they were kind of saying that Jaylen Warren was going to be essentially splitting. Najee was still primarily the guy. I mean,
20 looks last game.
Yeah, he's getting the looks. So I guess from that standpoint and the matchup with the Texans D, God, I don't want to do it. But it is as good of, if Najee is ever going to do it, it's going to be this week against the Texans. Would you play any Jaylen Warren? I haven't looked at the price tag yet on Jaylen Warren. But I mean, you're right. Like that's a matchup you have to at least consider playing the running back there. And Najee is the guy. We've got him at 2% ownership right now. All right. Swallowing my throw up. I think it makes a little bit of sense to play Najee Harris at 2% against this Houston run defense.
If he's that low owned against Houston, you got to take some shots.
Yeah, absolutely.
What if he gets 23 carries?
Yeah, and he very well could. Like, there's no reason to think that he's not going to, because they've been saying they're going to get Jaylen Warren more involved, and Jaylen Warren obviously is still pretty involved, but like Najee is still getting his anyway. It doesn't seem to be affecting Najee as much as you would expect it to be. That Jaylen Warren has kind of come into his own. The
only thing about Najee is he's not good. So
right,
if to your point speaks louder than anything else. Najee Harris has to be the guy that no one wants to play this week for me to be interested. If he ends up being like 12% owned, or similar ownership to a Javonte Williams or any of these other guys who are similarly priced, I have no problem just not getting to Najee Harris. But if he really is 2% owned against Houston, and hey, shout out to Houston. Maybe they're on the come up here. I like CJ Stroud. I like what this team's doing. But if he really is 2, 3, 4% owned, you probably want a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of have to, like, at that low of ownership in that matchup and getting the volume that he gets. Yeah, it seems, I mean, almost like not a no-brainer because it's Najee Harris, as you said, but at least something that I'm interested in there. What about Jaylen Warren? So Jaylen Warren is 5,000. We actually have Jaylen Warren getting more ownership than Najee. Would you rather just play Najee for the ownership discount?
I would rather play Najee over Warren. Yeah.
And I guess the ownership discount and the volume, like he does get better volume.
I think Warren would be more involved in the passing game. We're seeing that, obviously.
Yeah.
But I don't think it means that Najee can't come out and have like a 3-target, 3-reception game or something, which hopefully would be enough based on rushing upside. 50% of snaps last game, whatever. He was out there for most of the rushing downs, 19 to 8, Najee to Warren.
Lofty, I don't know if you saw this. We just got an ownership update like a minute ago. Now we're seeing, so Najee still just at 2.6%, Warren now down to 2.4%. So we do have, slightly lower ownership on Warren. I think either one of them you could take shots on. I probably wouldn't play them together, but I actually think at 5,000 at 2.4% ownership, Warren is in play as well. I think Najee probably the better bet there just because of the higher volume. But I actually think both would be in play against this Houston run defense.
Me too. And just looking now, if there's any, I'm just trying to see before we move on to wide receiver, if there are any.
Well, let me throw one at you. So what are we doing with, after we saw the Miami 99 fantasy points, I think we need to talk about A, the Miami running backs, and B, the Bears running backs facing that Broncos run defense. Like, what are we doing with these running back situations? I think Mostert's still the guy there for Miami. So I think that I'd be more inclined to go to Mostert than Achane. This is clearly a much tougher matchup against this Bills run defense than the Broncos run defense, but like we have to at least talk about it, right? Just because they put up 99 fantasy points last week. So let's start with the Miami running backs. I think 6,500 for Mostert. I'm probably going to play a little bit. I don't know that I'm going to go to the 5,700 Achane, but I could see myself regretting it in a big way if things don't go as I'm anticipating. I don't know. I don't know what to do with these Miami because now the prices seem about right for both Mostert and Achane.
At those prices, give me Mostert over Achane all day.
Yeah, just getting more involvement.
Look, that's the problem with that last game. As amazing as it was, it's still like the most massive outlier game you're ever going to see.
Yeah.
It's a massive outlier game. Anyone can say what you want. You could be a Dolphins fan and be like, nah, Laffy, this team's for real. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that these running backs, like you said, combined for 100 points. They had 8 touchdowns between them. Denver literally gave up on defense. Gave up. Like they stopped playing.
Like I've never seen anything quite like that. They were giving up bombs to Chosen Anderson.
That's a literal statement that you just made. That's not hyperbole. The 72-point game was what, like 1966 or some shit?
Yeah, right. That was before, believe it or not, before I was born.
Yeah, 2 years. We've never seen anything like that before. So for me, it's still Mostert.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
I mentioned last week when someone was talking about the Roschon Johnson thing about being a week early. And I commented something to the extent of like, I love the mindset of this, but let's wait till it's a spot where they can actually do it. That team was dead before the game started. We all knew that last week against Kansas City, right?
Yeah.
And, in hindsight, I can say that, but I kind of also thought the same thing about the Arizona Cardinals, and Joshua Dobbs and them went on to beat the brakes off the Cowboys. But for the most part, that Bears team was in disarray. All of that off the field shit with Allen Williams over the week, and then just injuries and everything looked terrible. Taylor Swift was at the game. Come on.
Right. That just ruins the whole game plan. They all see Taylor Swift and they fall apart.
Yeah, you're not losing that. But I think if there was a week to quote unquote be early with Roschon Johnson, this might be the week. This might be the week in large field tournaments that I'd take a couple shots on him.
Yeah, first of all, I blame Taylor Swift for my Justin Fields call not working out at all. In retrospect, that's what happened. But I love it. Yeah, Roschon Johnson 4,900. We do have Khalil Herbert at 4,700. So is it Roschon Johnson for you over Khalil Herbert? He's 4,900.
For me it is.
Because also coming in at lower ownership for Roschon Johnson.
Because I think nothing's working for this team right now. You've got a rookie with some upside. I don't think Khalil Herbert's actually a bad play in this game. You could actually see this game shooting out, or it ends 9-6. But no, I think there's a real possibility that Johnson could start to usurp Khalil Herbert in that backfield.
Yeah, definitely a possibility. Let's see, what were the routes run? I guess Roschon only ran 7 routes in week 3. Where was Khalil Herbert? Herbert ran 10, so not really far from that perspective. What were the attempts? Let's see. I think I have that right here.
8 to 7, Roschon to Herbert. Okay. I think.
So not all that far off last week. So yeah, I think to me it comes down to we have Roschon Johnson cheaper and getting lower owner. Or no, I guess he's more expensive, but getting lower ownership than Khalil Herbert. I think that would be my lean as well. Not a really strong lean for me though, to be honest, with them kind of splitting looks so far. And I think that what you're saying makes sense. Like they should be going more towards the rookie, but who knows if this is the week they start doing that. So I think both are honestly in play here.
Ooh. David S. Hey, new to DFS here. What's up, man? Welcome. Glad you found us. Hit that subscribe button. You want some more free content that's going to help you along the way. What is the importance in high or low ownership, and how does that play a factor in the players selected? All right. So this is definitely go and listen to our podcast exclusive episode yesterday. It's short. It's like 28 minutes, 29 minutes long. Ben and I dive really deep into how people can get over their head and make mistakes when it comes to ownership. That's on podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever. All of this stuff goes on podcast too. But Neil, just to be clear here, it's not the thing that people get bogged down in. And I know most of our viewers who've been watching us a while, they know this by now. So I'm glad you asked, David. The biggest issue you always see is someone being like, man, I'm trying to get away from the chalk and it's not working. And then you see it. Ben said, like, if a guy in this day and age, at 2023, is 0.1% owned, it's probably because he's legitimately not a good play.
Right.
So there's a difference between being like, I'm just going to go to all low-owned players and hope that works. There's a difference between that and just trying to make small changes, small differences, even if you have some high-owned guys. So how would you say you use ownership to build lineups each week quickly? Because God, it's 11:50 already.
Yeah, so to be clear, you're not trying to make a full lineup that is avoiding the chalk. Like you want to play, typically you're going to want to play some chalk in your lineup. So we talk a lot about contrarian plays, and lower ownership is better. So just to give you one thought exercise, I guess, like say so Devin Achane last week was a much better play at or helps you a lot more at 0.3% ownership than he would at even 3% ownership, because you're just dealing with so many fewer players, people having them in their lineups, and then you reduce the field size essentially. So taking it to the extreme, say Devin Achane this week, only one person plays him, or take whatever running back you want to play. One person plays him in your entire field of 220,000. He puts up 100 fantasy points. Well, you have a huge leg up on the entire field if you're the only person who has that player on your team. Whereas if 20,000 people have him in a contest with 200,000 people and 10% play him, suddenly you've reduced the size of the GPP essentially, but you've reduced it to 20,000 people in that GPP. So just think, and then you can that's a taking it to the extreme, but like there are micro examples of that throughout your lineups. Just any bit of ownership does hurt you a little bit, but essentially at the end of the day, you're trying to put up the biggest fantasy score possible, and typically the players getting more ownership are the players who are more likely to put up more fantasy points. So you kind of want to work in a mix of players who you just think are going to put up a ton of fantasy points, but then like if you're breaking a tie, you'd rather have, if two players are projected the same, one's getting 10% ownership, the other one 20, you'd rather break the tie to the guy getting less ownership.
For sure. Let's talk wide receivers. I think we broke down basically everything at the running back position.
Yeah.
Also, guys, you know it. Maybe you're new here. Maybe you don't know it. if you want our ownership projections, if you want our player projections, our top stack tool, our boom bust tool, all of our showdown, single game projections, ownership, simulation tools, top single game plays tool where you're getting the optimal percentages for everyone, captain, utility, you're getting ownership for everyone there, top play percentage, premium Discord, lineup generator, all of that. If you're not at Owner's Box yet, you're getting a free week of all of our tools when you sign up and deposit at Owner's Box. By far the best deal we've done, and we keep it running. Obviously, it was a month earlier in the year, but one free week of everything. So in this instance, you're getting Thursday night football, you're getting Sunday, you're getting Monday, you're getting the Sunday, the London game as well. You're getting the afternoon slate. You're getting everything, right? You're getting a whole bunch of slates. All of our tools, you get to test drive them for doing nothing outside of signing up on Owner's Box, where, for what it's worth, they have a $500 first match deposit bonus. Pretty good. You're not going to find that anywhere else right now, especially since you're on all the other ones. It's only a minimum deposit of $10, but if you have the means to do so, highly recommend that you exploit that bonus as high as you can, not just because of the bonus, but because the overlay that we've seen in these contests. I mean, last week, the last 2 weeks, I think they filled their flagship contest, $175,000 prize pool, $35K to first. I think they filled it to like 70, 75%, like 25+% overlay, dead money, like crazy. Josh likes to say this, and he's right. There isn't actually a better contest out there from the standpoint of your chances of cashing.
Yep.
Your chances of cashing in this are better than any other contest on any other site, unless you're finding overlay that is even remotely comparable to this, which you're not going to on DraftKings or FanDuel. Superflex contest too. You don't have to play a defense. It's an unsolved format, which makes it that much more appealing. Owner's Box, check it out. $35K to first, $175,000 prize pool, $500 first match deposit bonus. And the link is in the description. Jordan threw it in the chat as well. When you sign up using that link, because we have to find you, you're getting an entire week of all of our tools 100% free across the board. No add-ons needed, nothing. Every NFL tool, you've got it. And all of our Owner's Box, all of our stuff, all of our tools, Owner's Box is built into that as well. For the lineup simulator, which is our brand new amazing tool, the post lineup contest simulator, the contest generator, and everything else. We've got Owner's Box, FanDuel, DraftKings, you name it. Check it out for free when you sign up and deposit over there on Owner's Box and get in on that overlay, man. Massive overlay lately. All right. Wide receiver. Where do we actually start at wide receiver is the question, because there are way too many good ones for us to spend time on. Keenan Allen, justifiably highest owned. Devontae Adams, justifiably right now, second highest ownership. I love, even if I'm not stacking that game fully, I might just go secondary stack heavy with Allen and Devontae Adams there, Neil.
Yep.
Jamar Chase against the pass funnel Tennessee team coming in third. Puka Nacua with that volume. Tank Dell being at 4,600. Tyreek Hill against Buffalo in a huge total game. The list goes on and on and on here.
Yeah, and Stephon Diggs, like you get down to those two. I feel like a lot of the focus for this week is just going to come down to those two games that just look incredible. Las Vegas at the Chargers, and then Miami at Buffalo. Like those are just two high-powered offenses. The only good defense among all of them is the Bills, but that Miami offense is so good that we kind of think they can offset it. And then you get like places like Minnesota, Carolina actually looks like it could be a good spot as well. This is just a week that I think we could see another very high-scoring week this week, and because the chalk, I think, is likely to go off again. And the chalk being Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams, our two highest projected owned players right now, just in great matchups and going to get the volume. Mike Williams now out for Keenan Allen. If you know that, I don't even know if it helps Keenan Allen at this point because he's been so involved already. He's already gotten so much volume. I don't actually think that losing Mike Williams even helps him because the volume was already there. The matchup is already there. Devontae Adams coming back against that Chargers defense. Yeah, it's at the top. It just these players look amazing. So it's just a matter of you can't fit them all into your lineups. You're going to have to pick and choose from these expensive guys in great matchups.
John said if Jimmy G plays, nice to see you back, by the way, John. If Jimmy G plays, Adams will be in all of my lineups. I don't really blame you. I mean, so first of all, Garoppolo finished that game. I think he plays. They expect him to play. I really do think that he's going to play this game. So I tweeted this yesterday to pull this up. Here it is. All right. So Jimmy Garoppolo, listen to how he's distributed his targets in the two games that Adams and Myers have played. Remember, Myers with a concussion missed game 2,
That's
but he
right.
played week 1 and week 3. 70 targets. 41% of them have gone to Adams. He has a 40% target share in the season. 41% of them to Adams. Here's where it gets wild, though, Neil. 31% to Jacoby Myers.
That is, and in the red zone too. Like he's been targeted in the red zone. Yeah, those are the guys you want.
11% to Jacobs. Amir Abdullah 6%, Renfro and Carter 3%, and then Hooper, Michael Meyer, and Michael Meyer and Zamir White all have one target on 70 there. So this game stands out to me where if Garoppolo plays, you might not love the guy, and I get that, but maybe I'm just misguided here, right? Maybe this is just not sound logic, and I'm open to being wrong on this, okay? But at Jimmy Garoppolo's price point, currently on DraftKings at 5,300, if he does in fact play and he's fine, pairing him with Adams and Myers with the Keenan Allen run back, sans Michael Williams or Mike Williams, I kind of like that, man.
Yeah, I feel like that's a spot where, so Alex used to say all the time on these shows, like, well, you're already playing the chalky wide receiver. Why not just throw in the low owned quarterback to bring down the combinatorial ownership? And this is a perfect example of an easy way to do that. Like, not a lot of people are going to have the combo of, I mean, just because of Jimmy Garoppolo not being all that owned himself, not all people are going to have the stack of Jimmy Garoppolo with those pass catchers. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you bring down the salary a little bit with throwing Jacoby Myers in there. What is the Jacoby Myers salary? I don't want to misspeak. Let me find.
I think he's 5,500.
Yeah, so brings down the salary, and Jimmy G brings down the salary. So you got, two guys who are relatively inexpensive, and then you can just play the expensive guys in great game environments in Adams and Allen. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Garoppolo's dirt cheap when you think about it.
Yeah, no, somebody in chat just said, and I don't want to. So somebody in chat just mentioned that it could actually hurt Keenan Allen that Mike Williams. I think read a beat writer may have said that he thinks that it is going to hurt Keenan Allen, but not enough that it is going to affect me in this game, in this particular matchup.
It's certainly possible that it does. We see this stuff happen a lot, right? Where it doesn't benefit him the way you'd think. Plus, right. If I had the choice, I would rather have Williams in because Keenan Allen's already just been a monster to begin with.
Exactly.
It might hurt him from an efficiency standpoint. I have a very difficult time believing that it's going to hurt him from a volume standpoint, though. But
the problem is it can't really help him that much because he's already got so much volume going his way that it's like, are they really going to just throw it to him every time? Like, so yeah, I'm with you. I think that if it like I said earlier, like you just don't want to, when you've already got a great situation, you just don't want to add variables to it. And Mike Williams being out does add a variable there. So I don't actually like it because Mike Williams is out, but I like it because Keenan Allen already, he's talented, he's getting the volume, and he's in a great spot.
Here's the question though, if you believe that to be the case. Does your thinking, if you think that it's going to hurt Keenan Allen, does that mean that you're not going to play him because of that?
Not
you know
this
what
week.
I mean?
Not in this matchup. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe in some matchups, if this were a worse matchup
this week.
Yeah, this week, not going to affect it for me.
Are there any lower owned guys that you want to get to that right now kind of aren't? For me, I'll give you one. 5% Michael Thomas, I think, is entirely reasonable. 5,200. I really don't hate that. It's not going to excite you, but he looks healthy. And Winston, look, I don't love the fact that you're almost certainly going to see Winston in there. They're considering Derek Carr week to week, but I don't hate $5,200 Michael Thomas at 5 or 4% ownership or 5%. Are there any other spots that you like that might stand out as, hey, this guy's getting no ownership at all, I'd like to get a little bit of him?
T. Higgins, we've got coming in at just under 5% projected ownership. He's 6,800 in that pass against that pass funnel Tennessee defense. So I think T. Higgins kind of stands out as somebody I might have interest in. I was kind of thinking about Quentin Johnston, just like, could he step in and just play that Mike Williams role? Because he seems the best fit to play the Mike Williams role. I don't know if they're just going to give it to him, but because they played more of Josh Palmer last week. But at 3,700 in this matchup, I might even consider playing some Quentin Johnston. Just looking at the names as I'm going down the ownership, Quentin Johnston stood out to me as somebody who's really cheap and in a great spot. I don't know, 3% owned DeAndre Hopkins. Pretty interesting at 5,800.
I have a couple.
Yeah, let's hear him.
This isn't unowned, but if Cortland Sutton really is 7%, love him.
Yeah, against that Bears defense.
95% of snaps last week. Yeah. Not to mention that you're also talking about a Bears team that already been dealing with injuries. And now we already know that, right? Defense, offense. They could be without Jalen Johnson this week as well. That I know he's not having the greatest season, but that's not going to help them either at all. He's likely out with a hamstring. At least that's my assumption. Also, if you're in large field tournaments and you want to take a shot on a guy in the same game, I think that Marvin Mims eventually is going to they're going to have to start giving him more snaps. He's only played 24% of snaps in each of his last 2 games, but he's been good. He's been efficient. 3 for 73 last game on 5 targets, 2 receptions on 2 targets for 113 yards and a touchdown the game before that. You pretty much have to get Marvin Mims some type of work here and additional work, no less, that he hasn't been seeing in these last couple of games. He's 3,900. If you're in large field tournaments, that's one of those spots where you want to be early on a guy as far as his workload increasing. I think this could be the week.
It's funny because my instinct with Marvin Mims is, oh, this is a trap because he's not getting the volume. He's just gotten hyper efficiency and it can't possibly hold up. But he's coming in at under 2% ownership.
Exactly.
So it's not really a trap spot when he's getting that little ownership. One more name that I want to throw at you is, what if Jalen Waddle plays this week, which is looking, I think more likely than not. He's 7,600, but we've got him at 1% ownership right now. Do you think that would it just change if he is active? Like, is there any way that it holds up that low ownership if Jalen Waddle ends up being active?
You'd have to think that there's enough like two-man Miami stacks for that to be not
probably
real.
Yeah.
But how expensive? I mean, how feasible, honestly? Because I put together a Garoppolo, Adams, Myers, Keenan Allen stack. Without the rest of it filled out. Let me just play a cheap defense and see what else I have. Play the Bears in there. Screw it. 5,100 per player remaining. And that doesn't include the tight end position, which is so bad that you can pretty much close your eyes and take shots and hope one of these guys isn't terrible. So I'll throw like a Dawson Knox or a Kincaid in there. And then you've got 5,800. So what if you were to just say, you know what, I want to play Tua with Tyreek Hill, and I also want to play Jalen Waddle. Let's see what we have.
Getting expensive.
Because if you do that, you're probably wanting a run back too, right?
Right.
So if you put Diggs in that lineup too, before anything else, you have 3,500 per player remaining.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
Right? Even if you played the cheapest defense, you're still at 3,800 per player. Even if you did that and you took out Diggs and you put in Gabe Davis, you're still at 4,400. All I'm saying is that's a tough double stack.
Yeah, it's a really tough. I mean, just playing Hill and Waddle together is going to be tough this week. They're just too expensive for that. Yeah, I mean, it's worth thinking about. We'll see. Maybe value opens up over the weekend, but yeah, right now it would be tough to make that build.
You like Adam Thielen?
I don't. I want him to fail so badly, but yes, no, I think that he makes a lot of sense against this Vikings defense. Hard not to think that he's going to continue to see some volume, and volume against this Vikings defense just means fantasy points. I'm trying to find where his actual projected ownership is. It can't be. Oh, here he is. He's at 12% and he's 4,500. Yeah, I think that makes sense, to be honest. That seems about right for Adam Thielen in this matchup with the volume he's getting. I hate it. I don't want to do it, but I might have to a little bit.
Let's talk tight ends here.
Yeah.
By the way, glad to have everybody with us. We're 14 likes away from 100. Neil, I mean, you shouldn't need the same. A quick work of that, correct?
Not a chance. We're not getting there.
No, there's 14 people out there kind enough to take a single second and hit that thumbs up. It helps us. It does. If you like this content, you want to help support us, those small things go a long way. Subscribing to the channel, hitting the thumbs up, even checking out our podcast stuff. All right, let's talk tight ends here. I really, really hate this position. I'm telling you, man, it's gross.
Yeah.
And then even if you wanted to pay up for TJ Hawkinson, then you're left in a position where you're like, man, I paid $6,500 a tight end, but there's so many good expensive receivers and quarterbacks, and mid-range, high-end running backs. He's 4%, and it makes sense. We have Pat Freiermuth getting the most ownership by a mile on this slate. And I'll tell you what, maybe it doesn't stay at that ownership and that much of a discrepancy or disparity between him and the next closest guy. At 3,400, though, I kind of understand even the lack of targets that Freiermuth has seen. I kind of get against Houston why he's getting that ownership.
I get it too. I think it is overowned if he does end up that high.
Big time. I would want none of it, but I get why he's getting the ownership is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're absolutely right that it just looks ugly. Like it's not pretty out there at tight end this week. I feel like last week there were a lot of tight ends that I liked. This week it's much harder to find anybody that I'm enthusiastically put into my lineups. It's more going to be like pair him with the quarterback or as the bring back for the opposing quarterback. But there's not a ton of tight ends that stand out to me as I actually want to play them in this spot. And we've seen a lot of tight ends getting like less usage than they like, not being used on as many snaps as we've seen in some past years. What about, I think Durham Smythe did not play 100% of snaps last time out. I kind of want to double check that, but I believe that to be the case. Like he had been playing 100% of snaps. I was just thinking galaxy brain, everybody else, nobody's going to want to play Durham Smythe after everybody played him last week and he was awful. Maybe
he played 36%.
Man, I cannot believe that he went from 100% to 36%. That is absolutely nuts.
Yeah, you know who it was? It was Julian Hill that played 78% of
That's
snaps.
right. Do we play Julian Hill this week?
This might get hurt.
I don't think so. I hadn't heard anything. Maybe he didn't. We just never learned about it. What about Dawson Knox ran 22 routes, 63% of dropbacks. Dawson Knox was running routes last week. Whereas
it's also
Dalton
possible
Kincaid,
that Durham Smythe, why does this stupid screen here? Every time I turn the Samsung TV on, it defaults to Samsung Plus, which is like TV, which apparently I get for free. I don't use it, but one day I skipped through it and it has like hundreds of channels on it for free, but it always defaults to Kitchen Nightmares or First 48. So you might see some murder scenes back there. Sorry, Neil, my screen. Do you think maybe Smythe just wasn't playing as much because they didn't really need a tight end outside of somebody to block?
Possibly. It's just weird they went from playing him literally every snap to playing 36% of snaps. But I don't think I've heard anything about an injury or anything. So I think it's just unpredictable. Like, do they go back to the 100% snap share? Or, I mean, what they did clearly worked against the Bears. Are they going to be able to do that against other teams?
Yeah.
I think it's a hard spot to really predict here. It would be just hilarious though if Durham Smythe scores 2 touchdowns this week and plays 100% of snaps at 0% ownership after we all jammed him last week.
I'm with you. I might just say screw it and hope that one of Kincaid or Dawson Knox.
I was just about to say that. Yeah, those are. I was looking up the route participation from last week. Dawson Knox 63% route participation. Dalton Kincaid 57% route participation. Miami gives up fantasy points to tight ends. I like it. I think this is, and it's also just easy leverage at low salaries for these tight ends in Buffalo. So if you want to play, the leverage game here, I think going to the low owned tight ends for the Bills actually makes a lot of sense here. What do we have the ownership? We got Kincaid at 4% projected ownership. I think I like taking the going over that. And we've got Dawson Knox at 6%. So both reasonable ownership. Dawson Knox 3,100, Kincaid 3,200. I think either or you could, mix and match what you're doing with these Buffalo tight ends.
I think it probably makes sense, right? There aren't any really good options. And the chalk right now, if it ends up being Freiermuth, do we really want to die on that hill?
No, we don't want to die on that hill. Going back to the game environments that we like last week on my Outside the Box show, Scott brought up, he was like, well, Donald Parham, might be, if you're going to play one of these tight ends, maybe it'd be Donald Parham over Gerald Everett. I think we ultimately agreed you didn't want to play either of them. I said, well, the only way Donald Parham really gets you there is if he scores multiple touchdowns. And then, of course, he scores multiple touchdowns in that game. But I still don't think I'm going back there, even in a great matchup.
Have 2 receptions for 2 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, it was the most Donald Parham line you've ever seen, which, it's always live, but like even that, like it's not killing you if you don't play him. So I don't think I'm going back there. Oh, we do have Julian Hill is in here. We've got Julian Hill at 2% projected ownership at 2,500. I don't know. Hopefully we'll get more explanation of what happened there between Durham Smythe and Julian Hill, because one of them would be interesting if we knew they're going to play a lot of snaps.
Gross position, man.
It really is.
Maybe this ends up being the Dallas Goedert week.
Could be. I've been waiting for it.
I think it's in the cards.
Yeah, he's 4,400.
I honestly might call my shot on Dallas Goedert this week getting there against Washington.
He had an okay game on Monday, didn't he? Like, yeah, he's standout.
Dallas Goedert is the type of guy, and I mentioned this a lot last year, but he's the type of guy that you will get some downfield opportunities, particularly in the red zone, like inside the 20. You'll see him getting those deeper balls around the goal line, power his way through. But a lot of the stuff he's getting is just around the line of scrimmage, and then he picks up chunk yards after the catch. It's a good downfield blocking team as well. So those things are all viable enough to me where I'm willing to take some shots. But, Washington historically over the last couple of years, they've done a good job of limiting tight ends as well. So
yeah,
unless I'm wrong, maybe you guys can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but I feel like Washington is one of those teams that is just not allowed significant production to tight ends.
I think you're right about that, but I don't know. There's so many different metrics you can use for judging that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody just said that Donald Parham ran 50% of routes. Looks like he played 30% of routes in what I'm looking at route participation. So not really great for Donald Parham. And then we had Gerald Everett at 40% route participation. I don't know. I don't think either of those guys are guys that I'm super interested in playing this weekend, even in the great matchups. And then somebody else asked about the Raiders tight ends, whether they're in play. Just looking up the routes run for the Raiders tight ends in week 3. We had Austin Hooper running 61% route participation for Austin Hooper, just 33% for Michael Mayer. So I think you can make a case for Austin Hooper in this matchup with the Chargers. He ran 30 routes last week. That's enough for me to have some interest potentially.
1 target and 70 attempts in games with Myers and Adams scares the hell out of me.
Right. I mean, that is the downside. Is he's out there, he's running routes, he's not really getting targeted though so far.
And by the way, you're right. 16 routes last week for Parham. Gerald Everett 25. Yeah, a lot more. But on the season, Everett's at 63 routes and Parham's at 51.
Yep.
I don't know. Like you said, Parham needs to score. He has 32 yards on the season.
And like
what does he have? Like
is
3
so low.
touchdowns?
Like he needs to score and like maybe score multiple times because he's not going to get 5 receptions. So like you don't get the PPR points out of him.
And he's not going to get long opportunities downfield either.
Yeah.
He has 3 touchdowns through 3 games and he's averaging single-digit fantasy points. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Pretty crazy. Hey, let's talk about some top stacks here. My favorite part of the show. I know you love this as well. We can look at what teams, because our top stacks tool is awesome. Love this. Couldn't ask for more when you're looking to identify top stacks, because it's not just giving you the top stack probability, so the likelihood that they're the top stack. And Jordan, you can throw it up on the screen. Again, all of this, guys, will be refined throughout the week. It's Wednesday. We push a lot of this stuff early so we can do these shows for you. And, it's as accurate as it's going to be this early in the week, right? But you're getting top stack probability, the likelihood that they're the top stack. You're getting quarterback ownership, which, is indicative of what the stack is going to look like as a whole. Average salary, the value of these, the run play percentage, and then the rating. Guys, by the way, link in the description if you're looking for a couple of things. One, you want just all of our NFL tools for the week, for the month. Really, really awesome pack. We used to have it where you had to get this add-on to fully maximize the top stacks and ownership, and then you had to get like this add-on if you wanted the simulator and all of that. Now everything is in the same spot. The contest generator generates the lineups for you. The contest simulator runs the sims, gives you the simulated ROI on all of those lineups. You can make tweaks, ROI boosts, adjustments. It's awesome. I'm obsessed with that tool. I'm using it every site. The ownership projections, top stack tool, boom bust. Premium Discord is awesome. The lineup generator, which you can get separately, by the way. Best bang for your buck of any tool you're going to find at its current price point. If you can find something in the industry at that price point that's better, you come back and tell me, because you won't find it. Lineup generator is in the description as well. But the Sims Max monthly, that's down there. And the only difference between that and the Sims Max or the Sims data monthly package is that one of them you can only generate a certain amount of lineups in the contest generator before you sim them. That might not matter to a lot of you guys playing single entry or 3-max. If you're curious about the tools too, and then you want to come back here and jump in, we have all the videos on how to use all of these tools right here on YouTube. If you have questions, my DMs on Twitter are open. I just figured out that you can toggle off and on people who can DM you, like the whole verified thing. People were DMing me like, "Hey, Elon sucks. I can't DM you." And I was like, "That's weird. You should. I know you're not verified, but I have." So I went in there and looked at my settings, and it had a toggle. I selected, never did this on my own. It was defaulted to this, that if someone wasn't verified, they couldn't DM me, which is dumb.
That's probably the case for me then too.
Right. It's stupid.
So,
I was always saying, "Oh, my DMs are open." And people are like, "No, they're not. They are. Now they're fully open." I had no idea. Mine
will be if I can figure out how to do it. I'll open.
I'll show you if you need to get there.
Okay.
But guys, these tools are amazing, and you no longer need any add-ons. Every single tool that we have for NFL is included in these packages. If you want to get in on that, check it out. Still a long season to go. And if you're looking to increase that ROI, no better time to start than right now. Jordan can throw those links into chat as well, or in the description if you're watching this after the fact. All right, top stacks. Right now, our highest rated stack is Pittsburgh. But you know what I love? We have the Vegas Raiders as essentially tied as the highest rated stack. And the value score on this one is really, really nice. You look at the value on the Raiders, we have them fourth in value behind Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and the Chargers. Top stack probability for them is 6.4%. That's sixth highest on the slate. Yo, you're not going to complain about that, right? When it's a $5,300 Garoppolo, $5,500 Jacoby Myers. I know it's a small sample size, but it does seem like a highly concentrated offense in Vegas right now.
Jacoby Myers is better than people think he is. Like, it kind of makes sense that those guys are going to be. And I was also a kind of a Hunter Renfrow truther. I don't think that's happening, but I think Jacoby Myers, that we could continue to see it pretty condensed to those two throughout the season.
He was good in New England too. Remember, he could just never score.
Yeah, people just did not remember. People didn't think he was good. I think because he was in New England, he wasn't scoring the touchdowns. This year, as we said, he's been used in the red zone already, so that is promising. So yeah, I think that stack makes a lot of sense going to that Raiders double stack. Chargers look good once again. That was something that I feel like I wish I had played more last week, because on a first look, I was like, I want to play Justin Herbert and Kirk Cousins, but then I kind of ended up condensing more to Kirk Cousins because he was cheaper, and then Herbert ended up being the quarterback in a lot of winning lineups. I can see that happening again this week. We've got a lot of positive leverage there. 6% ownership going to Herbert, 12% chance of being the top stack. Again, this is going to update throughout the week. That might change, but as of right now, I would absolutely love playing some Herbert with Allen, and I guess that's the question: is who do you go as the secondary piece there? Do you try out Quentin Johnston this early? Do you go? You could. I think you could go to Josh Palmer potentially. I don't think I'd go to either of the tight ends, but maybe you can make a case for them. If Eckler's there, I guess you could include him in the stack. I don't know if I want to include Kelly as a pass catcher, but different ways to stack that up. We got Buffalo, looks great. Hard to not want to play Josh Allen against Miami, where he's going to need to be putting up a lot of points to keep up with the Dolphins offense. Coming in at 6% ownership for Josh Allen, 11% chance of being the top stack for the Bills. A lot of different ways to stack that one up. We just talked about, I think both tight ends are in play. Obviously Diggs is in play. I think Gabe Davis in play. So a lot of different ways to play that Buffalo stack. Miami, we have Tua coming in at 3% ownership right now, with Miami having a 9% chance of being the top stack. Definitely interesting. I feel like this is actually a week where I'm going to be fairly condensed. So like because the top stacks look just so much better than a lot of the other stacks. So I think the Chargers, the Bills, the Vikings, the Dolphins, the Bengals, the Raiders, I think those are the stacks that I'm really interested in playing this week. I don't think that I'm going to go too far off of those. I thought coming in here, and I saw people in chat were talking about the Chicago-Denver game. Like, that is the kind of game that I'd love to target in DFS, where it's just like, there are so many different ways that this could go. Like, it's ugly. Doesn't seem like the kind of game people are going to want to play. But we actually have those going over-owned right now, both going back to the Bears, who I loved last week, and I really want to play Fields again this week, but we do have that one looking a little bit over-owned right now. We have over 6% ownership going to Fields, with a 2% chance of the Bears being the top stack. And then we have 7% ownership going to Russell Wilson, with a 3% chance to be the top stack. So I don't know. I'll probably play some again. I'm probably going back to my ugly Fields play once again this week, just because I want to see if this Broncos defense is just ready to give up once again. So I'll probably go there a little bit, but doesn't really stand out as a great game environment in the tools in the top stacks tool.
I think the way I would like to play this is have pieces of the game and maybe not just full out stacks. Like
That makes
Cortland
sense.
Sutton, Javonte Williams, who's cheap. Sutton is there's no reason Sutton should be that much cheaper than Jerry Jeudy at this point.
Right.
So Sutton, maybe sprinkle some Mims in if you're playing the Millie, maybe a little Roshan Johnson. I think there's plenty of pieces. And this is a 46-point total game. It's actually a significant total.
Right.
But I'm with you in that I'm not sure you really need to just go full out game stacking a spot like this. I think I'll pick and choose my spots and grab pieces from this game.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think those are the like just looking at the top stacks and then maybe picking and choosing from that game. I don't think I'm gonna get too weird with the really low owned stacks here.
I'll say if you wanted to get insane with that game, the way to do it is you play Fields with DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Like you'd have to go.
That would
you
be
really wanted to
interesting.
get different because
Yeah.
Fields is going to be popular, but there's no way, and it probably should.
Nobody's double stacking him. Yeah.
Nobody's
right.
double stacking that game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right. That'll be speaking of combinatorial ownership, that's going to be a low owned combo for
What's
sure.
this word you're using?
Combinatorial. So it's just about like the ownership of groupings of players essentially instead of just individual.
Combinatorial.
I learned it from Jordan Cooper. And I've heard a lot of people, like multiple people have brought it up to me within the past couple of weeks. Like it's been something that people are clearly starting to think about a little bit more. And I'm like, it probably is smart, probably something that I need to think about a little bit more in creating my lineups.
What is the definition of this?
I don't know the actual definition. I'm probably not doing it justice when I'm trying to explain, but it's about the combos, like looking at the ownership of the combos of players instead of looking at individual players. So like,
Oh, okay.
what are the
so
odds?
So we discuss this every show. Now we just have terminology for it.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. Any other spots you want to hit on before we get out of here?
No, I think we've hit on all of the most important spots. Somebody brought up Anthony Richardson, and I do think like, yeah, if Anthony Richardson does play, then he's always in play. So I'll throw that out there. But I don't think that there's anybody else that really stands out to me.
Appreciate you guys as always. You're the best. We got marathon matchup show coming up tomorrow. All 12 games for the main site, breaking them down in depth. Eric Lindquist and myself. Be back on Friday. Take a more analytic, data, Sims-based approach. That's a fun show. Last week was a lot of fun. Greg and I, podcast exclusive on Friday, breaking down the afternoon slate. I hope you guys are listening to them. A lot of Rondale Moore talk last week. A lot of Giant stack talk the week before. Now I got to take my own advice. Greg and I got to take our own advice here and make it work. But you're going to be back on Saturday on this strategy show, tournament strategy. Yep. All culminates in a huge day Sunday, 3.5 hour live stream. And we got so much more going on here on the channel. I'm going to go record this picks for every game video on the Odd Shopper channel. And hopefully Dallas doesn't crush my 3-team teaser again this week. If you're not following us on the Odd Shopper channel, come check it out. We're climbing towards 100K subs over there. So join the family. Betting stuff for everything. No matter who you are, we got you covered. Follow Neil at PlayerQ DFS. Do it. Do it. Me at Loughran_D, LOUGHY_D. Appreciate you guys as always. And shout out to Jordan Klein for producing this one. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Strategy Show. Peace.